Chicago winters have this weird habit. They shake off the damp, let in a bit of sunlight, and suddenly, the streets feel different. Like time slows down just enough for something beautiful to happen. Alicia Bennett, 28, introverted but full of fire, was headed to a painting workshop in River North that day, trying to keep her nerves in check. It wasn't some big fancy event, just a local artist's way of helping people slow down for a couple hours and make something for themselves. Alicia loved colors, but not crowds. Not the noise. That's why she usually picked the back row, where she could focus on the canvas and quietly watch everything from a safe distance. But that day, something was different. The seat she usually took, already occupied, by a guy with a light tattoo on his forearm, spinning a paintbrush between his fingers like a kid playing with paper boats in the rain. "Sorry," Alicia said softly, a little hesitant. "I usually sit here." He looked up, deep blue eyes, a half smile, and that quiet kind of confidence that says, "I'm used to being alone, but I'm not afraid of it either." "Then let me be the change," he said, and slid over to give her the spot. His name was Arthur Whitman, 32, an architecture grad working at a renovation firm. He didn't look flashy, but something about him felt grounded, like he wasn't trying too hard to impress. Instead of asking her about her painting, he talked about the psychology of colors. And Alicia, who usually kept her guard up around strangers, found herself leaning in. It wasn't romantic at first. It was curious, honest. Arthur asked her out for coffee, and Alicia, well, she thought about it, twice. But the third time, she let herself say yes. Over cappuccinos and a shared banana nut muffin, Alicia opened up about her art, something she rarely did. Arthur looked her in the eyes and said, "When you talk about painting, it sounds like it breathes." But then, casual as ever, he added, "My mom says any girl who drinks lattes probably isn't that practical." Alicia laughed it off, out loud anyway, but something about it tugged at her. That was the first red flag, the kind that's easy to miss when you're hoping it's just a joke. In the weeks that followed, they met often. Walks down quiet sidewalks, flipping through poetry books in old stores, dinner at low-key spots no one else seemed to know. Arthur didn't bring flowers, but he brought quotes. Lines from books, napkin scribbles, sometimes a torn page. "Not written for you," he'd say, "but it felt like you." Then one day, Arthur invited her to meet his mom. "She's old school," he said. "Don't expect a big smile." Alicia didn't. But nothing really prepares you for a house that feels more like a church lobby than a home. The place was modest, suburban, clean, quiet, too still. And Eleanor Whitman, Arthur's mother, looked her up and down like Alicia was a resume someone forgot to print in color. "Your name's unusual, isn't it?" she said. Alicia smiled politely, caught off guard. Arthur chuckled, trying to smooth it over. "Mom, not now." Alicia shook Eleanor's cold hand and told herself, maybe she's just traditional. And then came Uncle Randy, Eleanor's younger brother, glass of whiskey in hand. He tilted his head, squinted a little, and said, "So, you're the artist?" "Huh. Thought artists were a bit more wild. Didn't think Arthur would go for one." Arthur laughed. Alicia did too. But hers wasn't real. On the way back home that night, Alicia's thoughts circled. Do I really fit into this family? Will they ever accept me as I am? But then her phone buzzed. A text from Arthur. "Ignore everything. You were perfect. They'll warm up." She read it 3 times, then locked her screen and sat quietly in front of her easel. She liked Arthur, truly, but the people around him, they made her uneasy. Still, she told herself, no relationship is perfect. You compromise. That's what grown-ups do, right? What she didn't know was that compromise was about to become erosion, the slow kind, the kind that chips away at your soul piece by piece. And the charm she thought she saw in Arthur? It was just a reflection, a smooth surface hiding cracks she hadn't looked closely at yet. Cracks that, if left alone, would one day burn through everything. Marriage isn't a one-day thing. It's a slow-burning candle. It either lights up your life or burns you down with it. Alicia and Arthur got married in a small but beautiful church in Chicago. Nothing out of a fairy tale, just something real and intimate. Her best friend Jessica gave a tearful toast. And Arthur, he said, "We're not perfect, but we're solid." The first few months felt like the beginning of a new painting. Fresh, vibrant, full of hope. Alicia ran her small freelance art studio while Arthur stayed busy with his renovation projects. Most nights, they'd crash on the couch watching documentaries. On weekends, they'd stroll through farmers markets like every other happy couple. But as weeks turned into months, something quietly started to shift. Arthur, the man who once admired every brushstroke she made, barely looked at her work anymore. "Looks good," he'd say, eyes still glued to his phone. At first, Alicia figured he was just tired from work, but slowly, his tone changed. His silence started to feel louder. He wasn't just distracted. He was distant. One night, she asked, "Is everything okay?" Arthur replied, "Don't overthink everything. Not everything is about you." That line hit her chest like a curtain dropping out of nowhere. Heavy, suffocating. Arthur was turning into a ghost. Not physically gone, but emotionally absent. His words grew fewer, his irritation more frequent. He muttered under his breath while washing dishes. He shut down during conversations. And sometimes, the emptiness in his eyes made her feel like she wasn't even there. Then came Eleanor Whitman, slowly but surely making her way into their home. At first, she'd call once a week. Then she started dropping by every other day, unannounced. "Arthur's shirts aren't ironed anymore. They used to be so crisp," she said casually one afternoon in front of Alicia. Alicia smiled and replied gently, "Actually, Arthur irons them himself. He likes having that freedom." Eleanor didn't blink. Freedom is for bachelors. Wives maintain standards. Arthur said nothing. Alicia looked at him, waiting, hoping he'd say something. Anything. But he kept his eyes on the TV. That's when Alicia started realizing her voice didn't carry weight in her own home. Then came her art exhibition. A big deal for her. She had planned every detail. It was local, but meaningful. Arthur had promised he'd be there. But 15 minutes before it started, he texted, "Got stuck at a site, can't make it, sorry." She smiled through it, greeted everyone, walked them through her work like a pro. And every time someone asked, "Is your husband here?" she just smiled again, like she had rehearsed that answer. Later that night, when Arthur came home, she asked, "Couldn't you have come for even 15 minutes?" He took off his shoes and replied, "You want me to risk my job for some art show?" "Some art show?" Alicia repeated, voice calm now. Not weak, steady. Arthur said, "I'm tired, Alicia. I can't keep pretending this art thing is more than a hobby." That night, for the first time, her eyes filled with tears. But she didn't cry. She just tucked the hurt inside, like a painter folding sadness into canvas. Eleanor got bolder after that. She didn't hold back anymore. "Arthur likes oats for breakfast. Didn't you give him any?" Arthur deserves a responsible woman, someone who understands him, who gives real advice. Alicia tried once more to talk to Arthur. "Your mom's interfering a lot. This is our home." Arthur shrugged. "She means well. You're being too sensitive." There it was again. Don't overthink. Alicia realized she wasn't a partner in this marriage. She was decoration, something placed, not appreciated. At night, when Arthur fell asleep, Alicia sat by the window and asked herself, is this the same guy I met at that painting class? Or was all that charm just pretty packaging? Uncle Randy still stopped by, whiskey in hand, sarcasm loaded. You still painting flowers? He'd sneer. Try painting something real, sweetheart. Arthur laughed. Alicia didn't. She started talking to herself more. Why am I still here? Because I loved him? Or because I got used to being afraid? Even her concealer started to give up. Her smile became mechanical. Her laughter delayed. And Arthur? He was in the house, but never really with her. Eleanor and Randy were no longer just relatives. They were permanent fixtures. In the house. And in her life. Every morning, Alicia looked in the mirror and whispered, today, I'll say something. But every day, silence spoke first. Cracks in a marriage don't show up in one big moment. They crawl in slowly, through tiny things, like a faint scratch on the wall that one day becomes a full-on fracture. And Alicia? She was already standing beneath that wall. No shield, no backup. Just waiting for it to collapse. 3 years had passed since Alicia and Arthur got married. Every year, Alicia tried to make their anniversary feel special. The first year, they had a cozy cooking date at home. The second, a nice dinner and a theater show. But this time, Alicia wanted something different. A formal dinner at home. She rented upscale dinnerware on a tight budget, arranged candles, and cooked a full 5-course meal all by herself. Even while sweating over the stove, she smiled, hoping maybe this time Arthur would notice. Jessica had asked her earlier, why are you putting yourself through all this? Alicia replied, because I want at least one day to remind Arthur who I am and what I'm capable of. That evening, Arthur showed up. A little late, but he came. He wasn't alone. He brought Eleanor and Randy with him. Surprise, Eleanor said, like she owned the place. Alicia was a little stunned, but quickly gathered herself. I had planned something a little more private. Arthur just took off his coat quietly and said, Mom insisted. Said she hasn't had a family dinner in weeks. Alicia kept her composure and finished setting the table. Every detail was perfect. The plates, the cutlery, the wine pairing, like an artist plating her emotions with a brush. Dinner began. Eleanor took one bite of the salad and said, little underseasoned, don't you think, Arthur? Arthur didn't look up. Maybe. Randy took a sip of wine and chimed in. Next time, let Arthur cook. He's the one with taste buds. Alicia didn't say a word. She just slowly turned her fork in her hand. Her fingers were freezing, but her face still held a polite smile. When the main course came out, Eleanor said, you've gained a little weight, Alicia. Is it the cheese, or just comfort eating? Arthur, casually refilling his wine, said, she bakes now. Cupcakes almost every night. Randy chuckled. Looks like you married a sugar factory. Alicia's neck stiffened. Her breath grew heavier, but her voice stayed calm. She looked at Arthur, silently begging him to say something. But he kept his eyes on the plate, like her dignity wasn't even worth defending. As Alicia brought out dessert, her hands trembled just slightly. Eleanor spoke again. You know, Alicia, marriage isn't about fancy meals. It's about knowing how to adjust and when to stay quiet. Alicia finally looked her in the eyes and said, oh, I know. I've been practicing that for 3 years now. The table fell into a thick silence, the kind you hear in a church after a funeral. Arthur looked at her sharply for the first time. Don't start drama, Alicia. Not tonight. She placed the dessert spoon down gently. Her hand wasn't shaking anymore. "Drama?" she asked, her voice steady. "Because I'm not laughing at your insults anymore?" Eleanor opened her mouth to speak, but Alicia raised a finger. "Number 1 second." Then she turned to Arthur, and with complete calm, she said loud enough for the whole table to hear, "You just buried this marriage with your own mouth." Silence. Arthur muttered, "You're overreacting." Alicia gave a faint smile, the kind that comes when something inside you finally dies. "Overreacting?" she said, voice even, eyes red. "You mock my effort. You reduce my art to a hobby. You slowly crush my spirit every day. And if that's called normal, then yes, I'm overreacting." Eleanor took a deep breath. "Arthur, you need to fix this. Control her." Alicia stood up. She placed her napkin on the table, like signing a final letter. "Control?" she said. "You don't control a wife. You respect her. But I get it now. This house wasn't built for a partner. It was built for a puppet." Arthur said nothing. Randy leaned back with a smirk. "Maybe you should take a walk, cool down." Alicia looked at him and replied, "Maybe you should stop drinking other people's misery." Every dish on the table suddenly felt tasteless, because it was served on top of a soul that had been dying quietly for years. Alicia slowly blew out the candles, one by one. "Happy anniversary, Arthur. May this be the last dinner where I set the table and eat my silence." She picked up her coat and walked out. Snow had started to fall. On the way down, her phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. "How did it go?" Alicia typed just 2 words back. "I'm done." And for the first time ever, those words didn't feel weak. They felt like a soldier finally coming home. Snow was still falling when Alicia arrived at Jessica's apartment. Jessica, her childhood best friend, the one who had seen every crack in Alicia's heart, every layer of her soul, opened the door and didn't ask a single question. She just pulled her into a hug. "Don't talk yet," Jessica said softly. "Just sit, and if you need to cry, cry." Alicia nodded. She held the cup of tea Jessica handed her, but her hands were still cold. Even in the quiet of that winter night, her face looked different, stripped of illusion, clear. That night, Alicia didn't sleep, but for the first time, she was fully awake. Sitting on Jessica's living room couch, Alicia switched her phone off airplane mode. 36 unread messages. The first one was from Arthur. "You embarrassed me in front of my family." Then, "You need to come back. We can talk. This behavior is immature. Mom is really upset." And then came the voicemail. Arthur's voice now carried something it hadn't before. Fear. "Alicia, I know things weren't perfect, but that's marriage, right? You don't walk away. You fix it." She listened to the entire thing, then hit rewind and listened again. Every time she analyzed his tone, there was no empathy, just ego. Then came Eleanor's texts. "You took a vow, Alicia. Running is for cowards. Arthur needs you. Stop acting like a child. Don't destroy his career over emotions." And finally, a message from Randy. "You always looked too sensitive for this family. No offense." Alicia gave a dry smile. Emotionally draining relationships always attack through guilt first. But Alicia, she was becoming immune to guilt. The next morning, Jessica found her at the kitchen table, writing something down. "What are you working on?" Jessica asked. Alicia replied, "Just 2 columns, what I saved and what I lost." Jessica looked at the list. Under saved, Arthur's mom's expectations, family dinner schedules, silent evenings, a man's fragile pride. Under lost, my self-respect, my art, my voice, my joy. That list read like a postmortem of her entire marriage. That same evening, Jessica took her to see a therapist, Dr. Elaine Moore. Elaine asked gently, "What do you want now?" Alicia answered, "Clarity, and then dignity." Elaine raised an eyebrow. "Not escape?" Alicia paused and said, "Escape is what you do when you're afraid. I'm not running. I'm going back to collect what's mine, to take my dignity with me, and to show them the truth behind their version of the story." She wasn't reacting anymore. She was strategizing. Over the next few days, Alicia began packing her paintings, carefully, quietly. This time, not for display. These weren't pieces meant for the world. They were reminders for herself, of who she was, before she became Arthur's wife. Arthur's messages kept coming, but they weren't loving anymore. They were panicked. "Don't make this ugly. We're already the talk of the street." And Alicia thought to herself, "You wanted my silence. Now let that silence be your mirror." Jessica asked her, "You're really going back to that house?" Alicia nodded. "Yeah, but not to beg, to shut the door." She made a plan, like a pilot charting a flight. When to go, what to take, who to speak to, who to ignore, and exactly what to say and when to say it. This wasn't an emotional meltdown. This was a psychological rescue mission. Alicia wasn't looking for answers anymore, because her questions had changed. Now she asked herself, when did I lose myself? And how do I bring me back? Arthur and Eleanor had no idea. The Alicia who was coming back? She wasn't the same girl they'd silenced for years. She wasn't bringing fire this time. She was bringing a mirror. There was something different about the cold that day in Chicago. Alicia stood outside Arthur's apartment with Jessica by her side, arms full of empty cardboard boxes and one key that didn't belong to a home anymore. Just the closing of a chapter. Jessica asked, "You ready?" Alicia nodded silently. There were no tears, no fear, just a calm, steady focus, like a surgeon picking up the scalpel one last time, not to hesitate, just to cut, clean and final. She rang the doorbell. Arthur opened the door. Hair a mess, eyes puffy, and a shadow of guilt clinging to his face. "Hey," he said quietly. Alicia stepped inside without a pause. Like this wasn't a visit, it was testimony. Jessica followed behind her, phone camera discreetly on. Just in case. Arthur started. "Listen, I think we should talk." Alicia raised one hand, cutting him off. "I'm not here to talk, Arthur. I'm here to collect what's mine, what I left behind, my identity, my space, my dignity." Arthur stood silent. All the lines he'd rehearsed? Gone. Eleanor stepped out of the hallway, pearl necklace in place, posture perfect. But there was a flicker of panic in her eyes today. "So this is going to be public drama now?" she asked with a smirk. Alicia looked her straight in the eyes. "Drama happens when people lie. I'm here with the truth. And a list." Jessica quietly set the boxes down. Alicia walked to the bedroom, calm and measured. She picked up each item with care. Her books, her brush set, that olive green shawl Arthur had given her during their first winter together. And then her journal. The one Eleanor had once mocked. Another useless diary? Alicia gently placed it in a box, like she was packing a broken mirror that still reflected something real. Arthur appeared behind her. "Can't we fix things?" Alicia looked up. "Do you mean fixing it by asking me to become the version your mother approves of again?" Eleanor snapped. "Women like you are the reason families fall apart." Alicia turned to her and said softly, "No, Mrs. Whitman. Women like me don't destroy families. They just stop pretending your illusion is real. We stay quiet long enough to hold it together. But when we finally stand up, we don't just do it for ourselves. We break the illusion too." Then came Uncle Randy, reeking of whiskey and entitlement. Drama queen returns, he sneered. Alicia smiled. Funny how my silence never bothered you, but my voice does. Arthur looked visibly uncomfortable now, his ego, guilt, and helplessness tangled up and hanging in the air. Alicia packed the last box, 5 of her original paintings, the ones Eleanor once called too abstract to sell. She scribbled on the side of the box, NFS, not for sale. Arthur made one last effort. You're just walking away from us. Alicia turned to him. I'm walking away from something that was never really us. It was roles. Your silence, her commands, and my submission. Jessica opened the door. Alicia stepped toward it, but paused at the threshold. She turned back and said the line that knocked the air out of the room. I'm not the girl who needs to explain her place to you anymore. I'm the woman who makes her own. Without you. Arthur tried to say something, but Alicia cut him off. And no, I'm not flipping the good wife chair on my way out. I'm flipping the cost. This house will feel just as empty as my heart did pretending to belong here. Jessica and Alicia walked out. Arthur stood there in disbelief. Eleanor was silent. For the first time. Randy muttered, "She's gonna regret this." And Eleanor replied quietly, "No." She knew exactly what she was doing. Nancy, Arthur's childhood friend, threw her birthday party at the same place every year. An upscale rooftop lounge in downtown Chicago. Classy crowd, jazz music, curated hors d'oeuvres, designer dresses. It wasn't loud, but it mattered. A subtle staple in the city's social circle. Arthur was invited, of course. So was Eleanor. And yes, Alicia received a formal invite too, maybe out of courtesy, maybe to stir some gossip. Jessica asked, "You really gonna go?" Alicia gave a soft smile. "Yeah, but not to watch this time. To show up." She wore a midnight blue satin dress. Elegant, poised, sharp, hair down, light makeup, and eyes that carried a kind of stillness you only get after you stop hiding your truth and start owning it. When Alicia walked in, the room shifted. Some heads dipped. Whispers followed. "She's here." Others forced tight little smiles. Look who finally came out of hiding. Arthur felt her presence immediately. He gripped his glass tighter and leaned into small talk with Eleanor like it meant something. Nancy rushed over. "Alicia, I didn't think you'd come." Alicia smiled. "Well, it's your birthday. I don't skip important days." She moved through the crowd with steady steps. Every move deliberate, like she knew she was walking through a stage built by someone else, and she was about to burn the script. Arthur finally walked up to her. "Glad you came." Alicia looked him in the eye and said calmly, "I'm not." His smile faltered. Eleanor stepped in. "People like closure, Alicia. Don't ruin Nancy's evening." Alicia met her gaze. Closure doesn't happen when a door slams in someone's face. It happens when the truth finally walks through it. Then, Alicia stepped toward the center of the room. Right as the jazz music took a natural pause, the hum of conversation softened. She picked up a glass from the table, gently tapped it. "Excuse me, everyone," she said. "I know I'm not the center of attention tonight, but since a lot of you know me, as Arthur's wife, or maybe the artist who disappeared, I figured I should say a few words." The room got quieter. Arthur stiffened. "Alicia, this isn't the place." She turned to him, calm, firm. "You've already told your version everywhere you could. Let me have this one evening." And then, without flinching, without tears, without dramatic pauses, Alicia told her story. She spoke about Eleanor's quiet insults, Arthur's endless silence, Randy's smug disrespect. She spoke of how she'd slowly given up her art, her voice, her joy, just to adjust to a home that never wanted her, just tolerated her. "I'm not here for sympathy," she said. "I'm here to remind you. When a woman stops showing up at parties, when an artist stops touching her canvas, when someone who used to laugh a little too loudly goes quiet, it's not always sadness. Sometimes it's erasure." Arthur stepped forward, trying to interrupt. "That's not fair, Alicia. You're twisting things." Alicia turned toward him. "Twisting? You called me too sensitive. Your mother said I was too soft. Your uncle labeled me dramatic. And now that I'm just speaking the truth, it bothers you." The crowd was still, frozen. Eleanor's smirk was gone. Randy quietly drifted toward the bar, avoiding the fallout. And Alicia delivered her final words. "I'd rather be alone than spend one more day with a man who thinks knowing my place means eating my food and saying thank you for it." There were no claps, no gasps, just the kind of silence that feels heavy, tired. The sound of reality walking into a room and no one knowing where to look. Jessica, standing near a corner, slowly nodded, proud. Nancy, who had once believed every word Eleanor told her, simply looked at Alicia and gently rested a hand on her shoulder. Arthur, Eleanor, Randy, they stood there like a broken chandelier, once admired, now hanging by a thread. Alicia placed her untouched glass back on the table, and without looking back, she walked away. 3 days after the party, Alicia woke up to a calm morning. No need for hot tea, no need for sound. She slowly opened the cupboard in her small apartment and pulled out that last suitcase, the one she'd once packed for a Europe trip with Arthur. Now it was being used for a different kind of journey. Freedom. There were no clothes inside it now. Just one folded manila envelope, sealed tight. Inside, the finalized divorce papers. On the front, she had written, "For Arthur, no edits, no footnotes, just full stops." Jessica asked her, "You heading over there today?" Alicia replied, "Yeah, not to go back, to end it." When she arrived at Arthur's place, it was Eleanor who opened the door. Her face looked drained, like she'd finally stopped trying to argue with reality. Alicia didn't bother with small talk. "Is Arthur home?" Eleanor asked. "What do you want now?" Alicia said, "Just to close the last door." Arthur was in the living room, anxious eyes, an empty mug in his hands, and unopened messages scattered across the table. He looked up at her, some faint hope still there. "I heard your speech. People said you were brave." Alicia walked over and placed the envelope on the table. "I wasn't brave," she said. "Just late to wake up." After a long pause, Arthur asked, "Is there any chance for anything?" Alicia slowly shook her head. "If something kills you a little bit every day, would you go back to it just because it once belonged to you?" Arthur had no answer. From the hallway, Eleanor called out, "Alicia, do you ever think maybe you lost something too?" Alicia turned to her. "I did. I lost a lot. But what I've found now is bigger than all of it. I found myself." Uncle Randy stepped out, half drunk as usual. "Women like you ruin families." Alicia looked at him and smiled. "Families that survive on a woman's silence. We're already ruined. My voice didn't destroy anything. It just revealed it." Arthur stared at her now, searching her face for even the slightest trace of regret. But all he saw was redemption. She walked slowly toward the front door, the same one she had entered years ago as a new bride. But today, she wasn't leaving broken. She was leaving whole. As she reached for the handle, Arthur spoke again. "Alicia." She paused, but didn't turn around. "I hope someday," she said, "you treat someone the way you never treated me. Like a person, not a position." The door shut. No slam, no noise. But the sound of it echoed through the room. Alicia stepped out. A breeze hit her. Not symbolic, not poetic. Just wind. Real. But it carried the quiet storm she had been holding inside for years. Later that evening, Alicia checked her phone. One voicemail. Arthur's voice. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, I don't know if that means anything now. She listened to the whole thing, paused, and then tapped delete. No smile, no tears, just a blank screen and a blank face, like a story that was truly, finally, over. She walked to her easel for the first time in years, picked up a brush, chose a color, and whispered to herself, I chose me. For the first time. And that's where her new story began. Not lonely, but whole. So, friends, if this story moved you even a little, give this video a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And friends, also tell us from where you are watching our video.